The ballroom shimmered under cascading crystal chandeliers, each prism scattering light across polished marble floors like falling stars. Laughter floated through the air in practiced tones, measured, refined, strategic. Deals were being negotiated in murmurs behind champagne flutes. Cameras flashed near the stage where a banner displayed the name of Daniel Reed's foundation in gold lettering. Daniel stood near the center of the room, tall and composed, wearing a midnight black tuxedo tailored to quiet perfection. At 42, he had built one of the largest tech infrastructure companies in the country. To the guests, he was a visionary. To competitors, a threat. To the media, an enigma. To himself, he was simply tired. He had just finished assuring a senator that the new education initiative would launch before the next quarter when he felt something unexpected, a small, persistent tug at the edge of his jacket. He paused mid-sentence. The tug came again. He looked down. A little girl stood there, her fingers gripping the fine fabric of his suit as though it were the only steady thing in the room. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her pale blue dress was carefully washed but faded from too many wears. One shoe had a tiny scuff near the toe. Her dark hair was pulled back with a ribbon that had once been white. Security noticed her instantly. "Sir, we'll escort her." Daniel lifted a hand. "It's all right." The guests nearby shifted, curious. A child didn't belong in this room of investors and dignitaries. Daniel bent down, lowering himself so his eyes met hers. Up close, he saw that her eyes were wide but not reckless, just determined. "Hello," he said gently. "What's your name?" "Alina," she answered, barely above a whisper. "Hi, Alina, are you here with someone?" She nodded. "Mama." "And where is your mama?" "In the kitchen. She's working." That explained the uniform-style dress, simple, modest. She wasn't a guest. She was the daughter of staff. Daniel softened his voice further. "And why did you tug my jacket, Alina?" She swallowed. Her grip loosened for a second, then tightened again as if courage required physical contact. "I don't have a dad," she said. The words came out plainly, without dramatics. "And Mama says you're the biggest boss here." A few nearby guests exchanged glances. Daniel felt something shift inside him, an old memory stirring. "I suppose I am," he replied. She inhaled sharply, as if about to jump into cold water. "Can I spend a day with you, sir?" "Just one day." The sentence hung in the air like a fragile ornament. Daniel blinked. "Spend a day with me." She nodded quickly. "I won't ask for toys. Or money. I promise. I just want to know what it feels like." What feels like? To have a dad. The music from the quartet seemed distant now. Even the laughter across the room dulled. Daniel's father had died in a factory accident when he was 12. One moment there had been a man who fixed broken chairs and told bad jokes at dinner. The next, there had been silence. Daniel had grown up fast after that, too fast. He learned to calculate risk before he learned to grieve. No one had ever asked him to be a father before. "Why me?" he asked quietly. Alina glanced around at the towering men in suits and women draped in silk. Then she looked back at him. "You look lonely," she said honestly. The simplicity of it struck harder than any insult ever could. Before he could answer, a woman rushed into the ballroom from the service corridor, her apron still tied around her waist. "Alina," she cried, horrified. "I'm so sorry, sir." She wasn't supposed to leave the kitchen area. Alina released his jacket but stayed close. Daniel stood. "It's all right." The mother's face was flushed with embarrassment. "She talks about fathers too much. I try to tell her to be strong and not bother people." Alina stared at the floor now, shame replacing bravery. Daniel looked between them. He saw exhaustion in the mother's eyes. Not laziness. Hard work. Long hours. Survival. "Does she have school tomorrow?" he asked. The mother blinked. "No, it's Saturday." Daniel turned back to Alina. "You asked for one day." Her head lifted slowly. "If your mother agrees," he continued carefully, "I'll spend tomorrow with you." The mother's lips parted. "Sir, you don't have to." "I know," he replied. He crouched again to face Alina. "But if we do this, we do it properly." "A full day." "Agreed." Her eyes shone as if someone had turned on a light inside her. "Agreed," she whispered. For the first time that evening, Daniel smiled without calculation. The next morning, the city was quieter. At exactly 9 o'clock, A black car stopped outside a modest apartment building on the edge of downtown. The building's paint was peeling in places. Laundry hung from a few balconies. Alina was already outside. She wore a yellow dress this time, ironed carefully. Her hair was brushed smooth, the ribbon replaced with a small clip. A tiny backpack hung from her shoulders. Daniel stepped out of the car himself. She looked smaller in daylight. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning, Dad." The word startled him, not because it was wrong, but because it felt dangerously right. He cleared his throat gently. "Ready for our day?" She nodded enthusiastically. Instead of heading toward amusement parks or luxury stores, Daniel asked the driver to take them to a quiet cafe by the river. It was a place he sometimes visited alone on rare mornings off. They sat by the window. Alina studied the menu with intense concentration. "Are pancakes only for rich people?" she asked. Daniel almost laughed. "No, pancakes are for everyone." She ordered chocolate chip pancakes and hot chocolate. When the food arrived, she stared at it for a moment before taking her first bite, as if memorizing the experience. Between bites, she asked questions without hesitation. "Were you rich when you were little?" "No." "Were you scared when your dad left?" Daniel paused. "He didn't leave. He died." She lowered her fork. "I'm sorry." He hadn't heard those words in years. "Yes," he said softly. "I was scared." "Who helped you?" "No one," he admitted. "I learned to help myself." She seemed to think about that deeply. After breakfast, they walked along the riverbank. The wind tugged gently at her dress. She slipped her hand into his without asking. He didn't pull away. They visited the Children's Science Museum funded by his foundation. She ran from exhibit to exhibit, pressing buttons, launching foam rockets, laughing at mirrors that distorted her reflection. At one station, children were invited to write a wish for their future and hang it on a small artificial tree. Alina took a card. Daniel stood a few steps back, giving her space. She wrote slowly, her tongue peeking out in concentration. When she finished, she folded the card and tucked it into her backpack instead of hanging it. "A secret?" he asked. She nodded. In the afternoon, they sat in a park watching other families. A father pushed his son on a swing nearby. The boy shrieked with laughter. Alina watched quietly. "Does it feel different?" she asked. "When someone stays?" Daniel followed her gaze. "Yes," he answered. "It does." She leaned gently against his arm. He realized then how silent his own home was. The penthouse overlooking the city. The echo of footsteps. The untouched second bedroom he once told himself might someday belong to a family. "Alina," he said carefully, "what if today didn't have to be the only day?" She looked up. "I can't replace your father," he continued. "But I could show up. School events, birthdays, help with homework, if your mother agrees." Her backpack slid off her shoulders unnoticed. "You mean, more than one day?" "Yes." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled instead of crying. When they returned to her apartment building at sunset, her mother was waiting outside, wringing her hands nervously. Alina ran into her arms. "Mama, he doesn't just talk about helping kids, he actually listens." Her mother looked at Daniel, unsure. He stepped forward calmly. "I'd like to remain in her life. Not as charity, not for publicity, simply as someone consistent." The woman's voice trembled. "Why?" Daniel looked at Alina, who stood between them holding both their hands. "Because," he said quietly. She asked. The mother covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Alina squeezed his hand. "You said one day." Daniel knelt in front of her one last time before leaving. "I was wrong," he said gently. "Some things shouldn't be limited." As he walked back to his car, the city skyline no longer felt like a monument to success. It felt like a place he might finally share. For the first time in years, Daniel Reed wasn't thinking about profits, expansions, or board meetings. He was thinking about Saturday pancakes. And a little girl who had been brave enough to tug his jacket and change his life.